Lila was a warrior, fierce and proud, trained in the art of combat from the moment she could walk. Her people were feared across the galaxy, known for their strength and ruthless nature. They conquered planets, bent other races to their will, and never showed mercy. So when Lila's ship was shot down by a human craft, she didn't expect anything less than suffering. She had heard stories of the humans, how they tortured prisoners, how they were quick to kill anyone who crossed them. She expected the worst. Her body ached from the crash, but Layla's instincts kicked in. She had to escape. She had to survive. But as she opened her eyes, she realized she was no longer in the wreckage of her ship. Instead, she was inside a small, clean room, locked in a cell. The walls were made of metal, and the only light came from a small, dim panel above her head. There was a door, but it was securely sealed. For a moment, Leela felt disoriented. She couldn't sense anyone around her, but she knew she wasn't alone. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a man stepped into the room. Leela tensed. He was human, tall, and broad-shouldered. His face was young, but his expression was serious, even wary. Lila's heart pounded. Here it was, what she had been waiting for. The human would surely make her suffer, just like the story said. But the man didn't move to hurt her. Instead, he stood at the door, watching her with a mix of caution and curiosity. Lila could see that his hands were empty. He didn't carry any weapon, no tool for torture. This confused her. Why wasn't he attacking? "You're awake," he said, his voice calm and controlled, but there was an edge of uncertainty to it. He wasn't sure what to make of her, either. "I'm sorry about your ship. The crash wasn't intentional." Leela narrowed her eyes. She had expected him to gloat, to taunt her, but he just stood there, waiting for a response. It was strange. She couldn't understand it. She studied him carefully, looking for signs of deception, but there was nothing in his posture or his eyes that gave away any malice. He wasn't acting like a conqueror or a torturer. You are human?" she asked, her voice low and harsh, her mistrust clear. The man nodded. "Yeah, I'm Adam. You're safe here. I won't hurt you." The words hung in the air, and Leela couldn't make sense of them. Humans didn't let prisoners live. They didn't show mercy. She had heard the tales, horrible, cruel tales of how humans crushed anyone who got in their way. And yet here was one telling her she was safe. Leela's mind raced. Could this be a trick? Was he trying to lower her guard before they attacked? It was hard to believe. She had fought too many battles and survived too many betrayals to let her guard down now. Still, she couldn't help the nagging feeling that something about this situation didn't add up. She stayed silent, waiting for the next move, her body coiled and ready to strike. The man, Adam, sensed her tension and took a slow step back, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not going to fight you," he said. I don't want trouble. The humans who shot you down, they're not like me. I don't support them. That's why you're here, and not in a prison cell somewhere else." Layla's mind spun. This wasn't like anything she had imagined. She had prepared herself for a fight, for torture, for death. She had assumed that her capture would be the end of her. But here was a human, standing before her, offering safety without demanding anything in return. Her instincts told her to attack, to escape. But she paused, her eyes never leaving Adam. She had been raised to trust no one, especially not a human. Yet something in his tone, something in his eyes, made her hesitate. "Why?" Leela finally asked, her voice harsh but controlled. "Why would you help me? Humans don't help aliens. You conquer them. You enslave them. You kill them." Adam's expression softened slightly. He seemed to understand her confusion, and for a brief moment, his face looked almost sad. "I'm not like them," he said quietly. "I'm not part of the military. I'm a scout. I work alone most of the time. I don't agree with what the others are doing. They're planning to invade other worlds. That's why I stopped you. I wanted to make sure you were okay, that you wouldn't get caught in the middle of their war. Leela was stunned. She had always seen humans as nothing but violent conquerors, but Adam's words didn't fit that image. She tried to understand. Could there really be a human who opposed the invasion? A human who fought for peace instead of war? Adam stepped closer, but he kept a respectful distance. "I know this is hard to believe," he said, "but I'm not your enemy. You're in danger, just like I am. We might not be so different, you and I." Leela wanted to scoff at him, wanted to tell him that his words meant nothing. She was a warrior, and she had seen the cruelty of the human race firsthand. But something in Adam's voice gave her pause. It wasn't like any human voice she had ever heard. There was no arrogance, no malice, just the simple truth. She didn't know if she could trust him, but for the first time in a long while, she felt the faintest glimmer of hope. Maybe there was more to humans than she had been taught. Maybe not all of them were the monsters she had been led to believe. Leela didn't know what would come next, but one thing was certain. This was only the beginning. Leela woke up the next morning to find herself still in the small, sterile room. The soft light from the ceiling illuminated the space, making everything feel both too clean and too unfamiliar. Her body ached from the crash, but it was nothing compared to the mental struggle she was dealing with. She had been captured by a human, yet Adam's actions didn't make sense. He hadn't harmed her, and he hadn't even tried to intimidate her. Instead, he had apologized. That alone confused her more than anything else. The door to her cell opened again, and this time, Adam stepped inside. He wasn't carrying a weapon, and he didn't seem the least bit threatening. Leela instinctively tensed but tried to stay calm, knowing she had to gather information before deciding what to do. "I brought you something to eat," Adam said, holding out a small tray with some kind of food on it. It didn't look like much, just some fruit, some kind of bread, and a cup of water. Leela eyed it warily. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice cold and harsh. She couldn't understand it. Humans didn't help aliens. They enslaved them, tortured them, or killed them. That's what she had been taught. That's what she had seen with her own eyes. And yet, here was a human trying to care for her like she was human. Adam hesitated for a moment, then placed the tray on a small table by her side. "I've told you before. I don't want to hurt you," he said. "I'm not part of the military. I'm just a scout, trying to do the right thing. I want to stop the invasion plans, and for that, I need your help." Leela stared at him, her mind racing. He wanted her help. Why would he need help from someone like her? She was an alien, a warrior from a race that had been hostile to humanity for as long as anyone could remember. Her people had attacked human colonies, driven them off planets, and fought them in countless wars. She was his enemy, and yet he was offering help. It made no sense. "I don't trust you," she said finally, crossing her arms over her chest. "I don't trust any of you. Humans are nothing but liars and killers." Adam nodded slowly, as if he had expected this response. "I understand why you don't trust me," he said quietly. "Your people and mine have been at war for so long. But I'm different. I've seen what my people are capable of, and I'm trying to stop it." Leela wasn't sure if she believed him, but part of her couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't lying. Still, she wasn't ready to drop her guard. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. "I need information about the plans for the invasion," Adam said. "You're a warrior. You've fought against humans before. You might know things that could help us stop them. If we can work together, we might have a chance to stop the military before they carry out their plans." Leela thought about it. She had fought in battles, led her people to victories, and seen her enemies' tactics up close. But working with a human, it felt wrong, even though Adam's words seemed genuine. Her people had always seen humans as nothing more than enemies to be destroyed. Could she really set aside everything she had been taught? Could she trust him, even just a little? "I'll help you," she said finally, surprising even herself. but only because I want to know the truth. If you're lying, I'll make you regret it." Adam nodded without hesitation. "I don't expect you to trust me completely, but we don't have much time. The invasion could happen soon, and if we don't act fast, millions of innocent lives could be lost." Leela looked at the food on the tray, then back at Adam. "I'll eat, but I'm not doing this for you," she said, her tone hard. "I'm doing it for my people. We don't need humans to conquer us." Adam smiled slightly, as if he understood her better than she realized. "That's fine. Just know that I'm here to help, and I'll do whatever it takes to make sure your people aren't harmed." As Leela ate the food, her mind was still on edge. She couldn't forget the stories she had heard about human cruelty. She had seen firsthand how they destroyed entire civilizations without hesitation. Was Adam really different? Or was he just another human playing a game, trying to manipulate her? She didn't know the answer. But for now, she had to focus on the task at hand. She would work with him, just long enough to learn more about his intentions. And if he turned out to be lying, she would make sure he paid for it. Later that evening, Adam returned with a device in his hand, a small portable communication tool. He sat across from Leela, carefully setting it on the table between them. "This is how we'll communicate," he said. "It's secure. No one will know what we're saying. I need you to tell me everything you know about the military's plans. Where are they stationed? What are they preparing for?" Leela looked at the device, then back at Adam. She wasn't sure if she could trust him with this information, but she couldn't deny that he might be her best chance to stop the invasion. "I'll tell you," she said finally, her voice cold but determined. "But I need your word that you won't betray me." "I swear," Adam replied, his eyes meeting hers with sincerity. And for the first time since her capture, Leela found herself believing him, even if just a little. Leela's mind was a whirlwind of confusion. She had spent most of her life seeing humans as enemies. They were the ones who had taken her family's homeworld, destroyed their cities, and forced her people into constant war. And now here she was, working alongside one of them. Adam, the human who had captured her, seemed different from the others, but how could she be sure? Every instinct told her to be cautious, yet something about him made her hesitate. The days passed slowly, and as they worked together, Leela found herself observing Adam more closely. He wasn't like the soldiers she had fought against. He didn't boast about his victories or brag about his power. In fact, he barely spoke about his past at all. Instead, he seemed focused on one thing: stopping the human military from invading more worlds. The more Leela listened to him, the more she began to question everything she had been taught. Adam talked about how he had once been part of the military, serving in a special unit. But he spoke of the horrors he had seen, the destruction, the suffering, the innocent lives lost, and how it had made him sick. He had left the military because he couldn't live with the choices they were making. His story was unlike anything Leela had ever heard from a human. One evening, as they sat in the small room where they had been staying, Adam opened up about his past. His face was serious, and his voice was heavy with regret. "I used to believe in the cause," he said, looking down at the table between them. "I thought we were doing the right thing, that we were bringing order to the galaxy. But then I saw what we were really doing. I saw entire civilizations destroyed, people who never had a chance. I couldn't be a part of that anymore." Leela listened carefully, but she wasn't sure if she could trust him completely. Was he really telling the truth, or was he just trying to manipulate her? She had to know more. "And now," she asked, her voice cold but curious, "what do you want from me? Why did you help me?" Adam looked up at her, his eyes tired but determined. "I want to stop the invasion. I want to make sure that no one else has to go through what I saw. I need your help because you know things about the military that I don't. I can't stop them alone." Leela studied him for a long moment, trying to find any hint of deception. But all she saw was sincerity. Adam had shown her nothing but kindness since her capture. He had given her food, protected her, and asked for nothing in return. It didn't add up. Why would he risk his life for an alien like her? You want to stop them, but why should I help you? Leela asked, her voice still filled with doubt. My people and your people are enemies. I should hate you. Adam nodded slowly, as if he understood the weight of her words. I don't expect you to forgive me or even trust me right away. But I hope in time, you'll see that not all humans are the same. There are others like me, people who want peace, and we're fighting against the ones who want to destroy everything. Leela was quiet, her thoughts swirling. She had always been taught that humanity was a threat, a species that couldn't be trusted. But here was a human who had turned his back on the very thing she had feared for so long. It didn't make sense. Could it be true? For the next few days, Leela and Adam worked together in silence. She gave him what information she had about the military's plans, and he listened carefully, taking notes. There was a part of her that still couldn't fully trust him, but another part of her was starting to see the truth in his words. Then one afternoon, while they were studying the maps of the military's strongholds, Adam turned to her with a question that took her by surprise. What about your people? He asked softly. What's going on with them? Why are they at war with humanity? Leela hesitated. She had never spoken about her people to anyone outside her race. It felt wrong, almost like a betrayal. But she knew that if she was going to help Adam, she had to be honest with him, even if it was difficult. My people were once peaceful, she began, her voice low and distant. We lived on a lush planet, far from the conflicts of the galaxy. But then the humans came. They colonized our world, took our resources, and tried to control us. They wanted to turn our home into a military base, and when we refused, they attacked. Leela paused, taking a deep breath. It felt painful to talk about, but she continued. We fought back, and that's when the war began. For years, we've been fighting, trying to protect our world from human invaders. But it feels like we're losing. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and we don't have the resources we once did. Adam's expression softened as he listened. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't know. I never knew how much pain my people caused you. I only knew what I was told. Leela's eyes narrowed slightly, but there was no anger in her voice. And now you know. Now you understand why I can't trust you. I do, Adam said, and I don't expect you to forgive everything. But I want to stop the fighting. I want to find a way for both our people to live without war. Leela studied him carefully, her mind full of questions. Could it really be possible? Could they find peace, even after everything that had happened? She didn't have the answers, but for the first time since her capture, she wasn't sure anymore if her enemy was truly the monster she had always believed. Adam was different, and that scared her. The days continued to pass, and Leela found herself slowly getting used to Adam's presence. She no longer tensed at every movement he made, but she remained cautious. Her mind was still clouded with doubt. She couldn't help but wonder, was Adam truly different from the others? Was he really trying to stop the invasion, or was this all a trap? Even though the questions lingered, she had to admit that he had proven his honesty so far. He hadn't hurt her. He hadn't tried to manipulate her. In fact, Adam had done everything in his power to keep her safe. And as they worked together to gather information, Leela started to see that maybe, just maybe, there was something in his words that made sense. Maybe humanity didn't have to be the enemy. One evening, as they sat together, studying maps and military reports, Adam spoke up. His voice was tense, serious. We don't have much time, he said, his fingers tapping the table nervously. The military is moving faster than I thought. They're planning a full-scale assault on your people's homeworld. If we don't stop them soon, it'll be too late. Leela's heart skipped a beat. The idea of her homeworld being attacked again filled her with a rage she had tried to bury. But this time, she couldn't fight alone. She had to act, and she had to act quickly. What's the plan? She asked, her voice steady, despite the rising anger within her. Adam looked at her, his expression grim. We need to get inside their command center. I know the location of their main base. It's heavily guarded, but if we can infiltrate it, we might be able to sabotage their systems, slow them down long enough for your people to prepare for the invasion." Leela nodded. She had no time for hesitation. This was her chance to make a difference, to protect her world. She wasn't about to waste it. "How do we get in?" she asked. She knew Adam had a plan, but she also knew that no plan was perfect, especially when dealing with the human military. The enemy would be expecting resistance. "We need to get close without being detected," Adam said. "I have some contacts who can help us, but it's risky. We'll need to move fast and be careful. If we're caught." Leela understood the danger. If they were caught, it would mean the end. She had faced death countless times, but this felt different. This wasn't just about her survival anymore. This was about saving her people. "I'm ready," she said, her voice strong and determined. "I don't care how dangerous it is. We have to stop them." Adam gave a small, reluctant smile. "I knew you'd say that." He paused before continuing, his eyes locked on hers. "I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm glad you're with me." Lila didn't respond. She didn't need to. The mission was clear, and there was no time to waste on words. She had always been a fighter, and now she was fighting for something greater than herself. The next day, they set their plan in motion. Adam contacted his allies, a small group of humans who were also against the invasion. They didn't have much, but together, they might be able to make a difference. Leela's heart raced as they moved through the underground tunnels beneath the human military base. She couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. Everything depended on this. If they were caught, the consequences would be disastrous, not just for her, but for Adam as well. And yet, with every step she took, she could feel her resolve growing stronger. As they approached the base, Leela glanced at Adam. His face was focused, serious, but there was a hint of something else in his eyes. Concern, maybe, or even fear, but whatever it was, it didn't stop him. He was determined to follow through on this mission, just as she was. "This is it," Adam whispered as they reached the final checkpoint. "Once we get inside, we have to move fast." Leela nodded. She could hear the distant hum of machinery, the footsteps of guards passing by. She felt the tension in the air. Everything had to go according to plan. There was no room for mistakes. Adam took a deep breath and moved toward the entrance, a small security panel beside the door. He quickly hacked into the system, his fingers flying over the keys. Leila kept watch, her eyes scanning the area for any sign of danger. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and they slipped inside. The interior of the base was cold, sterile, and filled with the quiet hum of machines. It was like walking into the heart of the enemy's operation. Lila's grip on her weapon tightened as they moved deeper into the facility. "Stay close," Adam muttered. "We don't have much time before the guards notice we're here." Leela's mind raced. She could feel the weight of every decision, every move. If they were caught now, all would be lost. But there was no turning back. She had to trust Adam, just as he had trusted her. They reached the main control room. Adam pulled out a small device from his pocket and attached it to the system's console. The device began to work, sending a virus into the system to disrupt the military's operations. It wouldn't destroy everything, but it would slow them down long enough for the plan to succeed. Leela glanced over her shoulder, her senses on high alert. The silence in the room was deafening, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. But Adam remained calm, focused on the task at hand. "It's done," he whispered, his voice steady. "We've done what we can. Now we need to get out before they notice." Before Leela could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. Her heart skipped a beat. They were running out of time. "Move," she said, grabbing Adam's arm and pulling him toward the exit. They had to get out, and fast. Leela's heart pounded in her chest as she and Adam made their way back through the military base. The sound of footsteps grew louder, echoing off the cold, metallic walls. The virus Adam had planted was working, at least for now, but they couldn't stay in the facility for much longer. They had done what they came for, but their time was running out. "Keep moving," Leela whispered, her eyes darting around the darkened hallway. She could feel the tension building, her senses heightened with every step they took. The base seemed eerily quiet, but she knew better than to let her guard down. Danger was always just around the corner. Adam nodded, his expression grim. He was focused, but Leela could see the worry in his eyes. This was far from over. They still had to make it out alive. The two of them slipped into an empty room, holding their breath as they listened for any sign of guards approaching. The silence in the room was suffocating. Lila's pulse raced as she strained her ears to hear even the faintest sound. She wanted to keep moving, but they needed a moment to regroup. "We'll wait here for a while," Adam said quietly, his voice barely audible. "If we stay too close to the exit, they'll be able to track us. We need to give the system more time to cause confusion." Leela nodded, trying to steady her breathing. She couldn't help but think about how much had changed. A few weeks ago, she would have never imagined working alongside a human, let alone trusting one. But Adam wasn't like the others. He had proven himself to be different, even if she didn't fully understand why. They waited in silence, the minutes stretching into what felt like hours. Finally, Adam stood up and motioned for Leela to follow him. It was time to move again. The two of them made their way to the back exit of the base, where Adam had arranged for a getaway vehicle. It was a small, unmarked shuttle that would take them away from the military's reach. But as they reached the door to the hangar, Leela's instincts flared. "Something's wrong," she muttered under her breath, her eyes narrowing. The door was wide open, but the shuttle wasn't there. Before Adam could respond, Lila's senses exploded with the sound of alarms blaring throughout the base. The virus Adam had planted had worked, but now the military was on high alert. They had been discovered. "We've been set up," Leela growled, the anger surging through her veins. This was never going to work. Adam's face paled. "What? No. I didn't betray you." Leela's eyes met his, and for the first time, she saw fear in his expression. She didn't know what to think anymore. The trust she had slowly built with him was slipping away, and the doubt that had always lingered in the back of her mind was now consuming her. "Then where is the shuttle?" she demanded, her voice cold. "If you didn't set us up, then why isn't it here?" Adam hesitated for a moment, then glanced nervously at the door. "I don't know. I swear, I had everything arranged. We were supposed to have a clean getaway." Leela could see the panic in his eyes. Was he lying? Or was something else at play here? She wanted to believe him, but the feeling of betrayal was too strong. She had trusted him, but now she didn't know who or what to trust. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. Lila turned sharply, her hand reaching for her weapon. A group of soldiers appeared at the entrance to the hangar, their guns raised and aimed at them. "Get down," Adam shouted, pulling Lila behind cover. The soldiers opened fire, and the noise was deafening. Lila's heart raced as she dove behind a pile of crates, adrenaline surging through her body. "What do we do now?" Leela hissed, her breath coming in short gasps. Adam gritted his teeth, his face set in determination. "We fight." They moved quickly, using the crates for cover as the soldiers advanced. Lila's hand tightened around her weapon as she aimed and fired. She wasn't sure if they could win this fight, but she knew one thing. She wasn't going down without a fight. For a moment, the world became a blur of gunfire, shouting, and chaos. Adam was by her side, moving with surprising skill. It was clear he had been trained, and despite the doubts in her mind, she couldn't help but admire his ability. The two of them fought back, taking down soldiers one by one. But for every soldier they took out, more seemed to appear. It was becoming clear that they were outnumbered, and escape was no longer an option. "We have to leave," Leela shouted, her voice rising above the noise. "We can't win this." Adam nodded, his expression grim. "There's another way out, but we have to move now." The two of them made a run for it, dodging gunfire as they sprinted toward a narrow hallway at the far end of the hangar. Lila could feel the heat of the shots grazing past her, but she didn't dare look back. There was no time. They reached the exit, and Adam quickly punched in the code to open the door. It slid open, revealing another set of tunnels. As they ran down the corridor, Leela's mind was spinning. What had just happened? Had Adam been telling the truth, or had she been blinded by her own desperation to believe in him? Just as they rounded a corner, Leela stopped dead in her tracks. She saw something she couldn't believe. Another shuttle, parked just ahead. The markings on it were unmistakable. "It's a trap," Leela whispered, her voice filled with dread. Before Adam could respond, the door of the shuttle opened, and out stepped a figure Leela recognized all too well, her own commander. Leela froze, her heart pounding as her eyes locked onto the figure standing at the shuttle door. The tall figure, wearing the uniform of her military commander, smiled as he stepped forward, his boots echoing loudly on the metal floor. Her mind raced. How was this possible? The very person who had sent her to fight against humanity was standing in front of her now, seemingly waiting for her. Her pulse quickened, and for a brief moment, everything went still. Adam, who had been running beside her, also stopped and looked toward the shuttle. His face hardened as he recognized the figure too. "Leela," her commander said in a voice that was calm and cold. "I knew you would be here. You never were good at following orders, were you?" Leela's breath caught in her throat. She had never expected this. She had never thought that the man who had given her orders for years would be here, on this human military base. This wasn't just any trap. It was a personal betrayal. "Commander," Leela said, her voice low, but her anger and confusion simmered beneath the surface. "What are you doing here? Why are you working with them?" The commander's smile faded as he took a step forward, his eyes cold and calculating. "I'm doing what needs to be done. Your mission was never about victory, Lila. It was a distraction, a means to an end, and you were too blinded by your hatred to see it." Leela's mind spun as she tried to make sense of what he was saying. Everything she had believed about the war, about her people's fight, was now being questioned. Was her commander right? Had everything she had fought for been a lie? Adam, sensing her confusion, stepped forward, his voice steady. "You're with them, aren't you? You've been working with the human military all along." The commander turned his gaze toward Adam, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Of course. You didn't think I was going to leave my people to die without a plan, did you? This war has always been a game to me. You all played right into my hands." Leela's stomach twisted at the realization. Everything she had believed in, everything she had fought for, was now shattered. Her commander, the one person she had trusted above all others, had been using her, playing her like a pawn in a larger scheme. Her mind raced as she tried to process it all. Why? Why would you do this? Why would you betray your own people? The commander's lips curled into a cold smirk. Because peace is impossible when there are those who cling to old grudges and foolish ideals. It's not about your people, or the humans, or even the war. It's about control. And I plan to have it all. Leela's hands shook with fury. All the years of training, all the battles she had fought, had been for nothing. Her commander had never cared about victory or peace. He had only cared about power. And now, the truth was in front of her, too real and too painful to ignore. Adam's voice broke through her thoughts. "So, you were the one behind the sabotage. You're the reason everything has gone wrong." The commander's smile deepened. "Yes, I've been pulling the strings from the start. The humans think they're winning, but they don't realize that the real war was never between us. It was between those who seek power and those who are foolish enough to follow them." Leela felt a surge of anger, and for a moment she thought she might lose control. Everything she had fought for, Everything she had believed in had been twisted into a cruel game by the one person she had trusted the most. "Why did you bring me here?" she demanded, her voice rising. "Why did you make me think I was helping you?" The commander's expression hardened. "You were useful. Your skills, your loyalty, all of it. But you were never meant to win. I needed you to believe in the mission long enough to do what I couldn't do myself." Leela's mind swirled with the horror of the truth. She had been nothing more than a tool in his plan, a pawn in a much larger game. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. All the lives lost, all the pain, had been for nothing. She had been manipulated, used as part of a sick strategy. Adam, seeing Leela's shock, turned to her with a calm but urgent look in his eyes. "We can't stay here, Leela. This is the moment where we have to make a choice. Do we fight, or do we walk away?" Leela's mind raced. The world around her seemed to slow down as she thought about her people, her family, and everything she had lost. Could she really turn her back on everything she had known? Could she walk away from the only mission she had ever believed in? She looked at Adam. His words, his actions, had been driven by a desire to stop the war, to stop the pain. Could she trust him now, even after everything that had happened? Her eyes shifted back to the commander, whose smug expression only deepened her anger. This man, who had betrayed everything she believed in, had no place in her future. She was done being a pawn. Leela turned to Adam, her decision clear. "We fight." Adam nodded, his face hardening in determination. "Then let's end this." With a swift motion, Leela pulled out her weapon, her fingers trembling, but steady. Adam did the same, his focus unshaken by the shock of the truth. Together, they moved toward the commander, ready to face whatever came next. The commander's smile faded, and he raised his hands, as though to signal something. "You're making a mistake. You don't understand what you're up against." But Leela didn't hesitate. She had been manipulated long enough. This time, she would fight for her own future, not for lies, not for power, but for something real. And with that, the battle began. The silence that followed the commander's words felt like an eternity. Leela stood there, her weapon in her hand, her heart pounding in her chest. Every muscle in her body was tense, ready for whatever came next. Adam stood beside her, his eyes focused, his face set in grim determination. The commander's smug expression slowly faded as he realized that neither of them was backing down. His gaze shifted between Leela and Adam, his fingers twitching as though he were preparing for something. For a brief moment, it seemed like time itself had stopped. There was no turning back now. This was it, the final stand. Leela's breath was steady but quick, her mind calculating every possible move. The commander had been manipulating her from the start, using her trust for his own gain. But no more. She had fought for peace, for freedom, but now it was time to fight for herself, for those who couldn't fight back, and for the future that was slipping away with every passing second. "You really think you can stop me?" the commander sneered. "You, a single soldier and a human who is too naive to see the bigger picture." Leela didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her resolve was stronger than ever. She could feel the weight of her people's hopes resting on her shoulders. They were depending on her to stop this madness, to end the cycle of betrayal and war. She wouldn't let them down. Adam's voice was calm, yet filled with authority. "It's over. Your plan ends here." The commander's eyes narrowed. "You're wrong," he said coldly. "It's only just begun." Before Leela could react, the commander raised his hand, signaling his guards to move in. The door to the shuttle slid open, and a group of soldiers stepped forward, weapons raised. The air was thick with tension as they advanced, ready to fight. Leela's heart raced, but she didn't flinch. She had been through worse. She had fought for her life. And now she was fighting for something greater. "Take them down," the commander ordered. The soldiers lunged, their guns aimed directly at Leela and Adam. In a blur of movement, Leela dove behind cover, her weapon raised, firing at the closest soldier. The sound of gunfire filled the room, deafening in the chaos. Adam moved swiftly, his movements precise as he took down one soldier after another. Leela's focus was sharp, her senses heightened in the heat of battle. She could feel the adrenaline pumping through her veins as she fired, each shot landing with deadly accuracy. The soldiers were relentless, but she was faster, more determined. She could see the fear in their eyes as they realized they were up against something more than just a soldier. They were up against someone who had nothing left to lose. The commander's face twisted with frustration as he watched his soldiers fall. He hadn't expected this kind of resistance. His plan had always relied on control, on manipulation. But Leela wasn't someone who could be controlled. "You should have stayed out of this," the commander hissed, his voice laced with venom. "You don't know what you're dealing with." Leela shot back, her voice steady. "I know exactly what I'm dealing with. A coward who hides behind others to do his dirty work." The commander's eyes flared with rage. "You think you're the hero here? You're nothing but a tool, just like all the rest." Leela didn't hesitate. She aimed at him, her finger on the trigger. But before she could fire, the commander turned and disappeared into the shadows, his voice echoing behind him. "This isn't over. You'll regret this." The remaining soldiers hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to continue the fight. But they quickly regrouped, closing in on Leela and Adam. They were outnumbered, but not outmatched. Leela could see the fear in their eyes now, and it fueled her. She wasn't about to stop. Not now. Adam moved swiftly, pulling Leela to cover as the soldiers advanced. He fired at the group of soldiers closest to them, taking out 2 of them in quick succession. "We need to move," he said urgently. "We're not going to win this fight by staying here." Leela nodded, her mind racing. She couldn't afford to stay in this fight for much longer. She had to finish it. She had to end this war, and this was the only way. She had come too far to turn back now. Together, Leela and Adam fought their way toward the shuttle. The soldiers were still relentless, but with every step, they grew weaker. Their numbers were thinning, and Leela could see the hesitation in their movements. They had been trained to fight, but they hadn't been trained to fight someone like Leela. As they neared the shuttle, Leela caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of her eye. The commander was waiting for them, his back to the shuttle, a look of pure malice in his eyes. He hadn't given up yet, but Leela was done running. This was her fight. She charged forward, Adam right behind her. The commander turned to face them, his weapon drawn. Leela's heart pounded as she raised her own weapon, aiming directly at him. "This ends now," she said, her voice low but filled with determination. The commander sneered. "You think you've won." Before he could react, Leela pulled the trigger. The shot rang out, echoing in the silence. The commander fell, his body hitting the ground with a sickening thud. For a moment, everything went still. Leela stood there, breathing heavily, her weapon still aimed at the fallen commander. She had done it. The war, the betrayal, it was all over. But it wasn't a victory that felt like triumph. It was the end of a long and painful journey. Adam stepped up beside her, his face unreadable. "It's done," he said quietly. Leela looked at him, and for the first time, she saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes. They had won, not just for themselves, but for everyone who had suffered because of this war. They had ended the cycle of destruction. But the future, as always, was uncertain. The road ahead was still unclear. But for now, Leela allowed herself a moment of peace. She had fought, she had won, and she had done it on her own terms. And that was enough.